Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Samuel Wilson Bartholomew IV, named after my dad and his dad and his dad. And in keeping with tradition, of course, I haven't told my father that I would be speaking today. So hey, Dad, how's it going? If you don't know my dad, well, just look for the reincarnation of Mr. Clean. He has the tight shirts, no hair anywhere on his body. And you can spot him from miles away. But actually, if you don't know my father, I'm genuinely surprised. You see, my father and I began doing these steak dinners at steakhouses across Nashville at the start of my senior year. And I don't think that there has been a single dinner where he hasn't run into someone that he already knew. And on top of that, as the most extroverted person I know, we never start eating until about 2 hours after we get to the actual restaurant. These steak dinners started so that we could discuss my journey during my final year at MBA. And these dinners' purpose was to answer a question. What does it mean to be a man of character in the modern world? This question is honestly hard to answer, which is why every discussion we have occurs after we've actually eaten the steak. The best way I can describe what I've learned from these conversations that I've had with my father is with a quote from the movie Gladiator, which I hope you've all seen. And these are also the words that my father says every morning when I leave for school. Strength and honor. In our family, it's good to be strong. Strong in mind, body, and spirit. For example, whenever I work out with my dad, we always compete. And every once in a while, he's able to outlift me. And then, of course, he has to stretch for 15 minutes before we actually leave so he can walk back to the car. Being a strong man, I have learned, is more than just physicality. It's also the struggle to take initiative, to pursue your passions, to treat others with respect, and to admit your weaknesses. To be honest, I've never understood why my dad wears shirts entirely too small for his body, or why he always sneezes so loud. But I do know that he is strong in the face of adversity. I think one of the best examples of his strength was my father's leadership after the death of his father, Bob. My grandfather suffered from Alzheimer's for a long time, and even though we all knew his death was coming, it was still a very difficult period of time, especially for my grandmother. My father struggled as well, but when his mother and siblings needed him, he was always there, and I know he will always be there for them. Seeing his strength during this time and watching him navigate through this period of loss has inspired me to be that same type of sibling, father, and son. I could talk more and more about how strong my father is and how much adversity he personally has faced, but I also need to mention the strength he shows as a man of honor. My father has made mistakes, like teaching 13-year-old Cooperez Nikki how to kill someone with a plastic spoon and pushing me into a sled onto a mailbox, breaking my arm. Despite his many faults, he is still the most honorable man I have ever met. Honor means doing what is right, no matter what. And my father always tries to do what is right. My father gives everything he can to those in need and always acts through kindness. Every time my friends come over, no matter what is happening or how busy he is, my dad always talks to each and every one of them. And this gesture may seem like a small act, but to me, it highlights the care he gives to every single person he meets. My grandfather used to say that relationships make the world go round. And I see my father live out this value every day. He has kept in touch with people he met in kindergarten, and journeys with young men and me from all walks of life. His kindness and honor extend to me as well as he pushes me to be a man of character. Most recently, he gave me a 4-foot sword. And while it is dangerous and seemingly pointless, its purpose is to drive me to act with character, to be careful of my actions as if I carry a sword with me at all times. My dad cares about the type of man I will become because he wants the best for me. I will leave you with this. No matter how strong my dad is, and no matter how many times I'm called weak in comparison to him, he is an amazing father, and he loves me no matter how many mistakes I make. When I get home from school, he's always sad to hear that I have plans. And for a long time, I thought that he was jealous because I had friends and he didn't. And after a while, I was able to realize that his jealousy was because he wanted to be spending that time with me. And now, I'm not saying he was the coolest for that, or that he's perfect, but I've always looked up to him, and I always will. I hope I can be as good of a father to my son as my dad is to me. I couldn't have asked for a better father. I love you, Dad. Strength and honor.
Good evening, everyone, and surprise, Dad. My name is Buchanan Lindsey. Tonight, I want to express the selflessness and integrity of my dad, Joshua Lindsey. If you don't already know him, he is hardworking, devoted to our family, and just an overall kind and nice guy. His presence has positively influenced me throughout my entire life, but especially over my past 6 years on the Hill. I want to begin with a story that I don't think I'll ever forget. Beginning in 7th grade, on my very first day of school, I walked into Mr. Russell's grammar and vocabulary class, where I was informed that I would have to memorize a list of 20 words and recite them by the end of the week from memory with definitions. To be completely honest, this assignment nearly ruined my first day entirely. What seems like an easily accomplished task now appeared to be the most daunting feat of my life to my 7th grade self. I came home in a state I can only compare to shell shock and told my dad, nearly breaking down into tears, that I would never be able to memorize this list. Looking back on that moment, I now realize that night was a defining moment for the rest of my time at MBA. That night, my dad taught me that all I needed was dedication, a level head, and a good attitude, and that I could get through any task that was thrown at me. Without my dad to inspire me and help me keep my cool, I don't think I ever would have achieved even that first assignment. Now that you all have heard my reaction to memorizing just a list of words, I think you can imagine what my reaction was when I was told we would be memorizing and reciting entire poems in front of an audience. Yes, not good either. But my dad's support does not end with just my schoolwork. For as long as I can remember, he has shown his unwavering devotion to our family through his work and the relationship he has formed with each of my siblings and me. Many afternoons, he has worked as my taxi driver, taking me to my violin lesson every single Monday before I could drive, or more recently, taking time out of his busy weeks to visit colleges with me so that my choice can be one that I am sure of. I'm so thankful that he was there to help me develop my interests and support my passions today. Without my dad's support along the way, I wouldn't be half the individual I turned out to be today. Even though he has dedicated so much time to me and my siblings, along the way he has shown what hard work means to him as he started his own law firm from the ground up 11 years ago and is now busier than ever. His work does not adhere to bank hours, as he is always available for clients and talks most evenings to 1 or 2. He never stops working. He is up before anyone else in my house to work out and prepare himself for the day. He puts up with our often less than enthusiastic morning attitudes to ask us about what we have going on at school. There isn't a single morning when my dad doesn't want to hear about our tests or big events that day. He brings the same positive attitudes to our dinners, asking us how those tests went and if we learned anything interesting at school that day. No matter what happened in his world that day, he's so selfless that he wants to hear about our struggles instead of letting his problems at work be his focus while he's home. I'm so fortunate to have someone like him to talk to about my day or anything that I need advice on. But more than just hard work, my dad has shown me how to be kind by stressing empathy and patience between me and my siblings. He's taught us to avoid arguments and instead respect someone who disagrees with you, a skill that will only become more invaluable in my future. In a world with increasing polarization and growing divide in opinions, he has taught me to show love rather than hate in the faces of my opponents. I'm so grateful for all the effort that he's dedicated to shaping me into someone that I can be proud of today. I'm grateful that I can stand here today and laugh and joke about these memories, but the more I think about them, the more I realize that my dad was always there with a positive attitude and a good outlook to help me get through anything, so that I will be prepared to face the challenges myself one day. As I look back at the lessons he's taught me, I know that he's trying to set me up for success in my own life. Dad, I know your dad wasn't around much while you were growing up, but I hope you know that you have become and always will be an incredible father to me. No words can express how thankful I am to have you in my life. I'll always strive to live up to the model you set for me. I love you, Dad.
All right. I would just like to start off by saying thank you to the nice people at Martin's for putting together a terrific dinner tonight. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. All right. My name is James Harvey Murff, and obviously I'm going to talk about my father tonight. Like my middle name, I received many great traits from him. Unfortunately, I also got his looks and inability to spell. I'm neither a writer nor an orator, so I'll have to try my best to truly express my gratitude and my good fortunes in having him as a father. But unfortunately, I will not be able to fully encompass who my father is in this short speech. I knew I had to talk about my dad tonight when about 2 weeks ago, he came home from work and told us that he had officially ended his 1,125-day streak of being on call. So for those of you that don't know, that basically means that for 1,125 nights, doctors, nurses, and patients could call my father and ask him whatever question they want to ask him. So to put that in perspective, that was in February 3rd, 2018, was when he started being on call. So seniors, we were not even, most of us weren't even allowed to drive without a parent in the car at the time, to put that into perspective, so that's pretty wild. But one thing that makes my dad unique is his interest in being a part of my life. My father was not a Cub Scout or a Boy Scout, but in second grade, when I came home and told him I wanted to join the Cub Scouts at Percy Priest, he immediately started learning as much about the Scouts as possible. Harvey went on every single camp out with me, and at the time, I didn't realize how much that actually meant for him, because he would have to take time off work, plan what we would eat, buy the food, pack the bags, and drive out to the middle of nowhere. Because, all I thought we would do is just show up somewhere on a Saturday morning with a tent. After 2 years of helping out, my father, whose only tie to scouting was me, decided to become the pack leader. So now, on top of everything else he was already doing, he would have to plan a meeting and lead the meeting. Now, this new responsibility entailed keeping 15 elementary and middle school kids occupied for about an hour on Saturday. So that sounds pretty, hard thing to do. So this alone would make me proud to be his son. But he did much more. During the summer of 2016, my troop decided to go to Boundary Waters, which is a 7-day-long canoe trip across the U.S.-Canadian border. However, the lakes we canoed on were divided by land, so you would have to, the only way to get to the next lake was you would have to do portages. So after canoeing for most of the day, we would have to take all of our gear out of the canoes, take the canoes, walk them all the way across the stretch of land with our gear, put them back in the water, and keep canoeing. Now, my dad is 5'9" and $140, so seeing him carry a 75-pound canoe and gear and not complaining about this over terrible, terrible terrain, I don't know how he did it. But he still managed to do it all with a smile, which is very impressive to me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to smile when I'm getting tested, but I really hope I will be able to. So without a second thought, my dad decided to learn all about Cub Scouts, take so much of his time, just because second grade James wanted to learn how to use a knife. I'm also on the crew team here at MBA, and like most of my peers and probably most everyone in this room, crew isn't the most well-known sport, so not everyone knows how it works. But the second I joined the crew team, my dad made it his mission to ask me way too many questions about how the sport functioned. Because rowing isn't that popular of a sport in Tennessee, it meant so much to have someone constantly asking these questions that I never would answer normally. Harvey would drive down to Chattanooga just to watch, a fraction of one or two races I was in, and usually I would lose. But you know what? That's all right, because it's almost as if I won every time he would talk to me after those races. So I hit the absolute jackpot with Harvey being my dad. I've already decided I'm not going to gamble anymore because I've used up all my luck with him. So if anyone here can look in the mirror and genuinely say that I am half the man Harvey is, I would be willing to say you're a great man. So, Dad, thank you for supporting my whims, picking me up when I fall, teaching me to reach for my best. And no matter what happens, I love you. I will always love you. And thank you.
In keeping with tradition, I've also not told my dad that I was speaking tonight. But in a good way, I feel as though my dad is unconventional to most fathers. Roughly 6 years ago, when I received my Instagram account, my dad liked the app and decided to make his own page where he can post a nice mixture of travel photos and jokes. With the intention of being internet famous, my dad is now at a grand 60 followers and still growing. His handle is DTM_roaming, if you want to follow him, by the way. He posts things that make sense only to him and maybe at times our family. For example, we have these tinsel light-up dinosaurs that we put out every Christmas that he's obsessed with. They've made frequent appearances on the account, including when he put one out with a face mask on during quarantine. As he posts his numerous travel photos, he's not above placing photos of his hotel door where he happened to be assigned to room 420. He really doesn't care if the joke is funnier to him than others. Recently, my sister made the mistake of introducing him to TikTok, so he now sends us numerous TikToks of talking dogs, which he finds endlessly hysterical. It's now gotten to the point where he sadly recognizes the TikTok trends before my sister. To all this, he would say he's just an early adopter of tech. His other great desire is to teach a course called The Stuff Every Guy Should Know. He adopted this mantra early in my childhood and continues to use this concept. He's never met a challenge that can't be solved by a little bit of Googling and a trip or 50 to Home Depot. Whether it be replacing a toilet or rewiring a light, he wants to DIY it and expects that I will help. Being shocked during wiring and having my skin taken off by a Dremel drill, among all other things, chalked up to be a big learning lesson for me. When I was younger, he decided that I should replace the doorknob to our basement, and after several tries, I got it installed, even if it still doesn't turn completely correctly. He also decided that I should learn to pressure wash the driveway, and I learned the hard way that wearing shoes for this task is essential. My dad loves music and movies. One of my fondest memories is going to see Billy Idol when I was in 7th grade, probably on a school night. By that same token, he allowed me to watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off when I was around 8, and when my mom asked if it was appropriate, he simply responded, "But it's a classic." This response would be used many times over the years, including when he let me watch Porky's a few years ago. His taste in music cannot be more varied from country to punk. He truly listens to it all, and he has instilled in me a love of 70s and 80s alt music and a willingness to broaden my taste. I actually got a turntable for Christmas, so now he's able to spend time reminiscing while rummaging through the vinyl stacks at the store, so it was definitely a gift for both of us. My dad has innumerably many fraternity stories that he has shared over the years. Most of these stories are probably not allowed in this setting, so suffice to say they often involve digging a backyard swimming pool, racing piglets, buying house furniture from rent-to-own stores, maybe even blowing up a car, among other things. Despite his potentially questionable parenting tactics, suspect storytelling, and social media dependence, I know that he is always there for me to confide in. And I know he supports me in whatever I decide to try next. He's also funny and generous. He's the type of dad who flies out to Montana just to drive my grandfather back to Alabama so he doesn't have to drive alone. He's the type of dad who gets up a little earlier to scrape the ice off the car windows for our family. He's the type of dad that you can have a discussion with and have your viewpoint tolerated. I seriously think that I could tell him that I plan to major in underwater basket weaving, and as long as I can make a good argument for it, he'd be supportive, and would immediately Google the best schools for that major. Finally, and most importantly, he's the type of dad that I hope to be one day. His quirks and eccentricities have enriched my life, but his love, dedication, ability to show care, and compassion all make my life better, fuller, and more complete. I love you, Dad.
Good night, everyone. For those who do not know me, I'm Ramsey Cole. My first name, like many of these guys, comes from my dad, Jonathan. Ever since I was a young boy, I knew I'd be attending NBA just like my father, Jonathan Cole. My childhood was filled with Friday night football games in Tommy Owen. My dad would sport his 1987 alumni hat, his class ring, and flash his big red alumni card for admission to the games. It was my destiny to follow in his footsteps and walk the same halls on the hill as he did many years before. There are many cliche stories of parents living out their former high school lives through their children. My father and my story, however, are different. When my dad was just 10 years old, his father left him, his mother, and his two older brothers to start a new life and a different family, which meant no longer supporting my father's family. All through school, my dad had to work to help his mom make ends meet. This is the best example of how hard work can get you anywhere in life. He made it all the way through high school here at MBA, college at Georgetown University, and law school at Tennessee while continuing to work to stay in school. Because of his experience, my father has been driven to give me what he did not have in high school. He doesn't live through my high school years for his personal gain, but rather he yearns to give me what he didn't have. My dad has not missed a single game, event, or even a father-son dinner throughout my whole career at MBA, except for a few that came on my birthday, which we missed together. Not one single event did he ever miss. I recognize this pre-commitment has been no easy task balancing it with his rigorous law career, but he always comes with a smile on his face and some tough fatherly love to serve me every night at dinner table. When he was enjoying his successful track and cross-country career for the Big Red, although it may not look like it now, he never had anyone to support him or put his arm over his shoulder after events such as winning the city championship his freshman year. One of my favorite memories I have with my father is winning the lacrosse state championship in 2019. After the game, he was the first one to greet me as we came off the field, and I took one of my favorite pictures with my mom and my dad. Every weekend I look at that picture sitting in my living room and am so thankful for what I've been given. A funny story about my dad was during my 3rd or 4th grade years when I participated in the NBA fall lacrosse leagues. I always wanted to play goalie, which was appealing at the time because it meant I wouldn't have to run all around the field, but we won't discuss that now. Shout out to Diesel. Every time my dad would drop me off, he would have a stern talk with me about how I wasn't allowed to just play goalie. I'm sure he even contacted Coach Smith or Coach John Harvey, who was the varsity lacrosse coach at the time, and told them he really wanted me to play attack or midi, which are other positions on the field for those of you who may not know. I never really listened to him, however, and just shrugged it off and said, okay, Dad, I'll play something else, but I always played in goal. I'm sure Coach Smith and Coach Garvey now would not chastise me for pursuing my career as a goalie, as I just finished playing my 3rd game of my 6th season in goal for the Big Red, and will be continuing my lacrosse career at Center College next year. During my time at MBA, my dad has not only served as my father, but also as both parents for a short stint in 7th grade. My beloved grandmother and best friend for my whole childhood, Dorothy Ramsey, or Dee Dee, as some of my closest friends know her, passed away at the end of the first semester exams in December of 2015. And shortly after, my mom began to struggle with her own health issues and was in the hospital for several weeks. Despite the tumultuous time, my dad never showed signs of wavering. Going through my first year at MBA, which is no easy task if you ask any of the seniors or even 7th graders here in this room or anyone behind the computer screen, my dad supported me every day. I was lost without my mom, but I really think I became a daddy's boy at that moment. Everything my father has done in his professional career has been for me and my sister, Anna Grace, who is a senior on the Division I rowing team at Fordham University and will follow in both my parents' footsteps next year at the College of Law at Tennessee. Many times throughout the year, my dad travels to Washington, D.C. and welcomes alum into our house as he serves on the Alumni Admissions Board and as the head admissions representative for Georgetown in Tennessee, and hope my sister or I, one, would attend Georgetown University. Although neither my sister nor I attended Georgetown, for many reasons, to pursue our athletic careers, he has never stopped supporting MBA and Harpethal students in the admissions process. Just this year, one of my lifelong lacrosse teammates and friends, Michael Spellman, was accepted to Georgetown, and my father was as pumped as if I were the one going to D.C. Everything I have, I owe to my father in MBA. He was forced at an early age to grow up, a reality not many boys around him had to face. He was molded at MBA to become the successful businessman and family man he is today. I want to thank you, Dad, for always supporting me when you never had the support every young man needs, even if they don't always voice it. I thank you for showing me how to balance schoolwork and athletics. Thank you for everything you have given me and shown me that helped shape me into the man I am today, and I hope to someday become half the father and husband you are. I love you, Dad.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to begin this by expressing a pretty simple phrase, in that words cannot truly describe how important a strong relationship with a father is to any boy. Now, that statement in itself is one of the most significant lessons I've learned through my 18 years of life. But as I've gotten older, I've begun to learn more and more about how blessed I am to have Paul Wilson as my dad. My dad is my hero. And though that seems like such a typical generic phrase to start this speech with, I'm going to spend the next few minutes explaining to all of you how he defines what it means to not just be an amazing father, but also an amazing man. I wanted to direct my speech to try to give everybody something to learn from through example of how we can all strive to be the best versions of ourselves. Because one thing I've learned from my dad is that no matter what happens to us in our lives, do not ever let anything stop you from being the best husband, father, son, brother, and whatever it may be that you know that you can be. So when COVID struck the globe in 2020, catastrophically impacted the lives of millions, many of us saw our dads have to do their work from home. For my family, though, it was just another normal day in the Wilson house. Because since when I was about 3 years old, my father's worked from home as the head of sales of our family business, an opportunity that has allowed him, my siblings, and I to spend lots and lots of time together. Now, my father never missed any of my games. He was always willing to drive Carter, Louise, and I to and from school, be there at any time of the day when any of us needed him, and the list goes on. My dad, in my eyes, completely defines what it means to be a father, and that he cares for his family more than anything else and is willing to do absolutely anything to assure that every member of his family is happy. But those are just some examples of the role of a responsible, loving, and caring father. But I wanted to use this time to discuss 3 very significant times in my father's life where he has had defying moments in which he's needed to find the strength inside of him to push through very, very challenging times. So when I was in the 5th grade, my dad had come to the realization that his life had become unmanageable and he needed recovery. So he set out for the next 2 years in working his absolute tail off to become the best version of himself, not just for his own well-being, but to also to best serve his family, because he knows that's what matters over everything. My dad understood that what he was on a path towards was not healthy by any means, and he decided to make that personal and professional change. So following countless and countless hours of counseling and hard work, my dad had completely turned his life around and become a complete superhero for my family. And for the next 6+ years and to this day, my dad has been more than an active member in the recovery community. As he began and continues to sponsor all sorts of people, he earned a role as a member on the board of Cumberland Heights in 2017. He's taken charge of a steering committee to raise money for the Cumberland Heights Arch Academy, which is basically a center for adolescent boys that provides them with the treatment to recover from substance abuse to assist them on their path to achieve their educational goals. He's assisted in raising millions of dollars for the purpose of creating the Arch Academy through countless hours of nightly meetings and tours around the complex in hopes of attracting potential donors. He was able to achieve all of this through his faith, and it has become an absolute integral part of who he is. My dad didn't just turn his life around. He decided to use his story to assist hundreds and thousands of people of all ages on their journey to recovery with zero judgment whatsoever. Dad, your dedication to serve anyone who comes in need of help is special, and the example that you set to all around you is something that I've always admired about you. Your commitment to improve yourself each and every day is a top-of-the-line quality for anyone to have, and your willingness to do whatever it takes for the benefit of people you care about displays such strong character within you. But this point is not where his story ends. In fall of 2019, my grandfather was diagnosed with lung cancer. Now, my grandfather was a very uniting figure in our family and was a very humble, beautiful soul that loved and cared for all around him. The bond my dad had with his father is unbreakable, and seeing his dedication to being right by my granddad's side through the entire process was heartwarming. So when my grandfather was in the midst of treatment, my dad spent multiple nights in the hospital and accompanied him to most of his immunotherapy treatments. He traveled on a daily basis down to Murfreesboro where my grandparents lived to keep him company and assist him in every step of the way. My dad, throughout the whole battle, used every ounce of energy within him to be there for his whole family, and especially when my grandfather sadly passed away in August of 2020. Dad, Granddad is so proud of the man you have become, through your journey of life, the commitment you have to our entire family, and the humble nature you have to yourself. Though this is the point where I would have ideally liked to end my speech about my superhero father leading our family and strengthening us through whatever happens, the story unfortunately doesn't end there. Recently, my family was faced with the most devastating event that may ever happen to us. On January 9th, 2021, my older brother, best friend, and role model, Carter Everett Wilson, tragically passed away in an accident at the age of 20 while down in Auburn. To set the scene, it was just another normal Saturday. I was out with some friends. My dad was picking up dinner, my mom and sister were at home, and everything seemed all right. But out of nowhere, my dad was faced with the phone call that God forbid any of you ever receive in your life. His firstborn child, Carter, was gone. Months after losing his own father, my dad had just lost his own son. And just take a second and look at the overall picture of what I've been telling you today. My father worked for years to better himself for his family. He built strong faith in what he believed in and used that to guide him on his journey. And my father then lost his own father in August of 2020, and he was the complete uniting force in his family for everyone around him as they mourned this death, not to mention the death of his own father. He was caring and seeking to help everyone else before himself. And about 5 months after the death of his father, he loses his son in a shocking, tragic death. The strength it takes to carry on following such a catastrophic event is something people told me I would have to spend years finding. And right here, what I'm about to tell you is one of the most amazing things that I've ever witnessed in my life. Following the death of his own son, my dad took it upon himself not to only fight this new battle in his life, filled with pain and grief, but he also put every single member of his family and everyone else around him before him, and he refused to let himself recover unless we were all there progressing right there with him. That, in my eyes, is what a father should be, a man that in the darkest of times will lead his entire family, providing them with unconditional love. And no one should ever have to experience this level of pain in their life. But here we are. I'm up here giving a speech exactly 2 months after the date of my brother's death, because I cannot go on without saying and sharing with all of you today how lucky I am to be blessed with my father. I faced a time where I told myself I never wanted to leave my house again and that my life would never be near the same. And I struggled. But my dad was the one that picked me up. Dad was the one that taught me to use this tragedy to build my faith instead of tear it down. Dad was the one that taught me how to be strong in the face of adversity. And Dad was the one that taught me how to be the absolute best man I can be at all times, while through it all, absorbing the pain of losing the boy who taught him how to be a father. My dad didn't ask for any pity. He didn't ask for any attention. Instead, he focused his energy on reinforcing to his whole family how much he loves and cares for every single one of us. Just think about that. 2 of the most significant figures in my father's life were taken, and his initial reaction is to help others. That quality of selflessness, loving, caring man that my father is something I strive to be each and every day. And as I said before, words cannot describe how important a strong relationship with a father is to a boy. Without the relationship that my father and I have, I would be completely lost, struggling to find the answers to my brother's death. But my dad has provided my whole family with the love and positivity that we've all needed, and the impact he's had on my life is something that I'm forever blessed with. Dad, I'd be lucky to grow up and be half of the man that you are. I'm beyond grateful for you, and I wish I could talk forever, but I have to end my speech here. I love you, and thank you for everything.